Hey guys, welcome to Discover Music. Today, as you see by the title, we are going to be talking about Pearl Jam's fifth studio album, Yield. In preparation to listen to their new album, Dark Matter, I wanted to finish their discography and continue to go through their albums to see how their back catalog holds up today. And unfortunately, Yield is not one of them. So let's get into it. Now, I've been reviewing music for a long time. Since 2016, actually. And with 13 other grunge albums under my belt, I can firmly say that I'm not really a fan of grunge. I wasn't alive when its heyday was blossoming from the underground, and I wasn't around when Pearl Jam specifically was a household name. So, I have to go into this album seeing its merits purely through a musical standpoint and purely through how the music made me feel. Now, Yield was released in 1998, which is 1 year after I was born. So, it is safe to say that I have a fresh and non-rose tinted glasses opinion and listen to this album when I'm listening to it now for the first time in 2024. Now, I can understand completely why people would like this album. I do, because for a lot of people, it was the soundtrack to a great part of their life. And I have a bunch of albums that are like that for me. But unfortunately, I do not have that perspective for this album. I intend to look at this album as objectively as humanly possible. I do enjoy the album 10, and Versus wasn't too bad. But No Code, which is the other album I heard from Pearl Jam, was not good at all. And I would venture to say it is one of the top 10 worst albums I have reviewed thus far in my over 300 reviews that I've done. Now, that being said, I came into Yield hoping that it was a step in the right direction and will be at least better than No Code. And I can firmly say it is. It is vastly better than No Code. But does it still reach the heights of 10 or even Versus? I have to say not, unfortunately. So let's get into why. Now, while Yield's departure from their grunge roots is not super surprising to me, as No Code saw a slight step in the direction away from grunge, their alt-rock stylings on this album just kind of fall flat for me. I acknowledge and support the band's desire to branch out and experiment with some new sounds. And, based on my research, this album is the first where it was a collaborative effort between all the members of the band, instead of it just being an Eddie Vedder show, which actually made me super excited for this record because it was kind of a Snoozefest to get through. Out of all my listens, I had to frequently stop and try to wake myself up at times. Because unfortunately, there is not a lot to really get you going, to get you moving, to be super fascinated and interesting with. There's just not a lot of substance here. I really do feel like the bland and uninspired songwriting, the lack of memorable hooks or melodies, the repetitive song structures and predictable chord progressions, and the lack of energy and excitement on the album really is what hindered it and held it back for me. Now, I know Eddie Vedder's vocal stylings isn't for everyone, and a lot of times it's not for me either, but that doesn't mean he's a bad vocalist. However, on this record, he seems to have a sort of identity crisis. On each song, he seems to channel a different singer, which ultimately makes him lack the originality that he exudes usually in his vocal performances. Sometimes he sounds like Kurt Cobain, while others Chris Cornell, but they always end up being some failed imitation of them instead of being his unique spin on their vocal stylings. Because of this, it makes him sound inauthentic and uninspired to make the music that he's singing on. While on paper, each of these Pearl Jam tracks on Yield are supposed to be deep and in tune with your inner self. And some interviews have really shown that they took time to make these lyrics inspired. Unfortunately, when it comes to listening to the album in full, removing all those outside features and outside knowledge, none of that is conveyed through the performances on the tracks. Now, I know I have been very negative thus far in this review, and because I didn't really enjoy this album, but let me highlight some positives that I can take away from this record. I do believe that the guitar parts are well written and well performed, and they do sound good on most tracks. And the guitar, bass, and drum production is usually flawless, which makes of a pleasant sound. Now, unfortunately, I can't say the same for the vocal productions or vocal performances, which do detract from the album. So, to wrap this review up, I will have to give it a 48 out of 100, which to me is below average. Now, I rate it a little differently, where 50 is your more mediocre, average music. So, in the grand scheme of things, Pearl Jam's Yield does not rate super poorly, but the boring and derivative alt-rock sound, the lackluster songwriting and uninspired vocals, and the failure to evolve in an interesting and exciting way really take this album from potential to Snoozefest, in my opinion. I acknowledge that this might appeal to die-hard Pearl Jam fans or those who are more nostalgic for the late 90s alternative rock scene, but I cannot recommend this album in good conscience to anyone seeking more innovative or memorable music, especially in this time frame. So, with that being said, guys, please put your thoughts of this album down below, and let me know if you've heard Pearl Jam's Yield, and if you have any memorable moments or differing opinions on this record. I know having negative thoughts, and especially some iconic bands, can be very decisive, but I have to be true to myself and true to my thoughts, and I want you guys to be also. So please, I invite a debate for your perspective down below and offering alternate viewpoints. And as always, please subscribe and like to help me out to get you some more great reviews. And as always, rock on.